So the NHL season is quickly approaching. It's time for my standings predictions. I'm going to start in the Metro. In eighth place with 63 points, I have the Columbus Blue Jackets. This should not be a surprise. Their forward core is one of the worst in the league. It was really bad last year, and then you had the tragic passing of Johnny Gaudreau as well as trading away Patrick Laine. So it might be the worst in the league now. Their D core also isn't good either. Aside from Zach Werenski, there's no one that stands out there, and their goaltending tandem is pretty bad too. And Merz Lincoln's and I forget who their other goalie is that actually, but it's bottom five in the league too. The reason I only have them regressing by 3 points is because I do think guys like Kirill Marchenko, Adam Fantilli, Kent Johnson can all take steps forward, but I still don't think they'll be enough to make up for the losses to his forward core. So I have them at eighth. At seventh place, I have the Philadelphia Flyers with 77 points. They do have some good forwards in Konechny, Tippett. I think Mitchkov will have an amazing rookie year, but outside of that, their forward core is really underwhelming. Their D core is nothing that catches. Their D core doesn't catch my attention either. You look at their projected D pairs: Cam York, Travis Sanheim, Nick Seeler, Jamie Drysdale, and Igor Zamula, Rasmus Ristolainen. Just pretty below average. Their goaltending tandem might be one of the worst in the league with Sam Ersson and Ivan Fedotov. They did have 87 points last year, but taking a step forward, but in points wise, but a lot of those points came in the first half of the season, and then the second half after they lost Carter Hart and everything. They were one of the worst teams in the league, and I think they're probably more of that team than the team they were in the first half of last season. So therefore, I have them coming in at seventh with 77 points. In sixth place, I have the Pittsburgh Penguins with 84 points. You look at them, I think this team will be pretty similar to last year, except they don't have Gensel or Riley Smith anymore, which will lead to a decline. You look at their forward core: Crosby, Philly, Malkin. I think is kind of underrated. No, he's not the star he once was anymore, but he's still a pretty solid top six guy in my opinion. And then they have Russ, who's still a solid top six winger. But outside of those three, there's really no one that catches my attention. That forward core is just really underwhelming. Their defense isn't bad, but I don't think it'll be enough for them to finish any higher than this. And their goaltending tandem: Tristan Jarry is a pretty good goalie when he's healthy, but he's pretty injury prone, so I don't really trust him to stay healthy. And Nedeljkovic is a below average backup in my opinion. So I have this team. This team is just kind of stuck in that like below mid range. So I have them come in sixth at 84 points. It just doesn't really catch my attention at all. Coming in fifth place, I have the New York Islanders with 97 points. I think this team will improve a little bit. They had 94 points last year, so I think that they're going to improve by a few points. You look at their goalie tandem: Ilya Sorokin and Semyon Varlamov. It's one of the best in the league. I think Sorokin, I know he had a down year last year, but I think he will bounce back. He was a top three goalie in the league the previous few years, and was a Vezina runner-up the previous year in 2023, so I definitely think he bounces back. I think he's still one of the top goalies in the league. Moving on to the D core, they have one of the best offensive defensemen in the league in Noah Dobson. He put up 70 points last year. Pelican Pollock, I know that pair isn't what it was a few years ago, but they're still a pretty good D pair. And then for the forwards, they have a pretty good first line: Duclair, Horvat, and Barzell, and the depth is decent too. So yeah, I think they're going to really push for a playoff spot. It wouldn't surprise me if they got in, but they did rely a lot on overtime points last year, so that's why I only have them improving by a few points, not as much as some people think they're going to improve. So I think they finished fifth place right outside playoff spot, but again, it would not surprise me if they got in. In fourth place, making the second wildcard spot with 98 points, I have my Washington Capitals. I know what you guys are thinking. They got really lucky last year to get into the playoffs, but the team should be better in every way this year. First, looking at the goalie tandem: Lindgren won't repeat what he did last year most likely, but I think him and Thompson will be a better tandem than him and Kemper. Moving on to the defense, they made some really big additions this offseason: Jacob Chikrin and Matt Waugh, so they probably have a top 10 defense core in the league now. I know a guy like John Carlson, who's probably still the Caps' top defenseman. I know he's not what he was a few years ago, but he's still a really solid top pair guy who can still play a lot of minutes. He led the entire league in time on ice last year, so he's still pretty good at 34 years old. And Chikrin's another top pair defenseman. Matt Waugh will be a really solid addition on defense, or he'll really help us defensively and as well as on the PK. So I really like the defensive core for the Caps. Then moving on to the forward core, I know it's still not great, but it should definitely be an improvement over last year, starting with Tom Wilson. A lot of people are talking about how he's not the same, or how he's fallen off, or that he's just not been the same since his injury a couple years ago. But I disagree. I think he just had a down year and that he can bounce back, because You look at his stats in the first 30 games last year, he had 10 goals, 8 assists for 18 points, which is on pace for 27 goals and 49 points. Whereas in the final 44 games, he had 8 goals, 9 assists for 17 points, which is on pace for just 14 points and 14 goals and 31 points. So so the first half of the season he was still on pace for like 50 points, like still a solid top six winger. And I think he just had and then he kind of fell off, but I think that was just a bad year. I think he kind of went through a slump and that he can bounce back this year. I still think he's a very good player. They also added Pierre-Luc Dubois and Mangiapane, and while I don't like the Dubois contract long term, I think he definitely will make the Caps better this year. I think people who are saying he's going to make them worse this year are just kind of looking at his contract and not looking at how he'll contribute this year, because I think he did have a down year in LA. I don't think he's this elite player, but I think he will be better than he was in LA. I really think guys like Connor McMichael and Hendrix Lapierre can take another step forward this year. Lapierre had just 22 points in 51 games last year, but when you look at break it down, he really picked it up in the second half of the season. A lot of those points came then, and there was a point where he was one of the highest rookies in the league at the time. So I'm really high on him progressing and for the future, and I think he will take a big step forward this year. And then Ovechkin, of course, had a down year, and he is getting older, but I think he can bounce back despite his age. I wouldn't count on it, but I wouldn't count against it either. So, yeah, I think this forward core, while it's still not great, I think it will be better than last year. And I think the Caps will make the second wild card spot. I know I might be, or I'm not. I will admit I might be a little biased, but I have them. I'm not saying it's going to be easy because they do still have to compete with the Islanders. They have to compete with some of the Atlantic teams, which will be a really hard division. But I have them coming fourth in the Metro in the second wild card spot. In third place with 107 points, I have the Carolina Hurricanes. Their forward core is not elite, but it's still good, and they've always been more of a defensive team under Rod Brind'Amour anyway. And then their first line is still looking pretty good with Svech, Aho, and Jarvis. Moving on to their defense, they have one of the best defensive defensemen in the league in Jacob Slavin, as well as Brent Burns, who's still a pretty good offensive defenseman as their top pair. So that's looking pretty good. The rest of their D-core consists of Orlov, Chatfield, and then they brought in Gostisbehere and Sean Walker this offseason to replace Brady Shea and Brett Pesce, which that's definitely a downgrade, but I still think Walker and Gostisbehere will get the job done, fill those roles pretty well for them. And then their goalie tandem, Frederik Andersen and Pyotr Kochetkov. I think Kochetkov at just 25 years old, which is still relatively young for a goalie, can take a step forward this year. And Andersen, when he's healthy, is still a very good goalie. So I have the Canes coming in third. I think they regress a little bit, but I still think they're a very good team and going to be contending for the Cup this year. In second place with 109 points, I have the New Jersey Devils. The Devils obviously had a massively disappointing season last year, but I think they're definitely going to bounce back. They had 112 points the year before, and I think they're closer to that team than this team last year because they did have a lot of things go wrong last year. Like they had major injuries to key players. Like Dougie Hamilton only played 20 games, and Jack Hughes only played 62 games. So that's a combined 82 man games missed for your top forward and defenseman last year. They also had horrible goaltending, and while I think Markstrom is overrated, I don't think he's the elite goalie that some people make him out to be. I still think that he's going to be a big improvement over Vitek Vanecek and Kira Schmid, so that'll be an improvement for the Devils. I'm really high on their defense with their projected D pairs being Jonas Siegenthaler, Dougie Hamilton, Brendan Dillon, Simon Nemec, and Jonathan Kovacevic and Nick DeSimone. And that's excluding Luke Hughes and Brett Pesce, who are currently injured. Like when those two get back, their D-core is going to be stacked. Their offense is elite too, with their first line being Timo Meyer, Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt. Second line being Tomas Tatar, Nico Hischier, Dawson Mercer. Third line being Andrej Palat, Eric Haula, and Stefan Nason. And their fourth line being Paul Cotter, Curtis Lazar, and Nathan Bastian. Like both their defense and forwards are looking elite. Their top six is amazing. Their depth is amazing. And I'm just really high on this team all around. I think they're an elite team, and it would not surprise me if they won the division. I think they're that good. And that means coming in at first place with 110 points and winning the division, I have the New York Rangers. The Rangers won the President's Trophy last year, and while they didn't do much to improve this offseason, they still are a very good team. I don't think they'll regress that much. Looking at their forward core, their first line being Panarin, or projected first line being Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere, Second line being Kreider, Zibanejad, Riley Smith. Third line being Cooley, Hedel, Kako, and fourth line being Brodzinski, Carrick, and Rempe. So their top six is very elite, one of the best in the league. I do question their depth a little bit aside from Hedel, but I still think they'll get the job done. And there is a concern over some of their stars, like Zibanejad being power play merchants at times last year, but I still think they'll be fine. I think they'll do well. I think their forward core is still one of the best in the league. I'm not as high on the defensive core aside from Adam Fox and Keandre Miller, but I think they'll be all right. And then looking at their goalie tandem, they have the best. They have, in my opinion, the best goalie in the league, in Igor Shesterkin. And we've seen in years past, there's been times where he was able to carry the Rangers to some pretty big wins. So I think it'll be the same this year. There's going to be games where they don't really deserve to win, but Igor just carries them because he does that every year. And then Jonathan Quick had a good year last year. I don't really know what to expect from him this year because he was looking pretty washed up before last year, but we'll have to see if he can still be what he was last year or close to what he was last year, at least being a solid backup, then that's even better for the Rangers. But yeah, I have the Rangers winning the division with 110 points. But yeah, that concludes my Metro Division standings predictions for the 2024-25 NHL season. I want to thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll be seeing you in the next video for my Atlantic standings predictions.